Hi everyone, welcome to lecture 4 this week. And today's lesson, or this week's lesson, I'm going to try to do in one 15-minute lesson, especially because I'm posted late, so I'm sorry about that. But for today, we'll watch this video lecture and we'll talk about the sleepover lesson that you all responded to. You did such a great job. I have some notes. We'll talk about that. And then we'll review the important point of Chapter 2, which is student-centered learning. Also this week you'll read Chapter 3 and you only have 2 questions, question 1 and 4, and hopefully you all have an OPE now. If not, let me know. We'll post suggestions on 3 specific ways to make the sleepover lesson student-centered. We'll review the lesson plan template. Don't worry, we won't do the lesson plan this week, not yet. That'll be next week, so I just want you to look at it. And then I just want you to start looking at the ELDP proficiency level. So we'll take a minute to do that as well. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to take a minute before we talk about your comments, and let's just look at the little bit of our friend of the sleepover lesson and take a minute and listen to him. So here we are. Let's see what he has to say.
Do you like sleepovers? Is that fun? Have you ever been to a sleepover? Did you have a sleepover?
Okay, I have to say some of you are superstars because right away a number of you had mentioned the idea of comprehensible input with Stephen Krashen. Again, if you've had me, we've talked about this, and that's the idea. Comprehensible, we understand what that means. Meaningful. Input, what you tell your students. In that room, not one of those students had been on a sleepover. He says, do you like them? They all say, oh yeah, they're great. And then he said, who's been on one? And we see it gets more and more obvious if the students don't understand, because a lot of you mentioned, they start offering, oh, you bring your computer, you bring your pencil, you bring a lunchbox. And from that, he should understand they don't understand what a sleepover is. Also in their culture, sleepovers, probably aren't that common. So right away, we had a number of challenges with the lesson, and even though some of you did find the positives, like his peppy personality, let's see, Cassie, you said, oh wait, students didn't understand. You said students didn't even understand the idea. You're absolutely right. You got it. Cameron, you said you were bored. In 5 minutes, you were bored. Me too. I was bored. If we're bored, imagine how those students feel. And you said there's no differentiation. There's not. The students are telling him, he writes on the board. And Jennifer, you are the one that you also mentioned. Hey, he's writing on the board. Of course, who should be writing? It's so much easier to have our students writing. Invite them to write on the board. Let's see. Hannah, you said he has a long way to go to make this an impactful lesson. Absolutely. It's a great way to kind of wrap this up. Lauren, you said, you said you were uncomfortable. Absolutely, I'm uncomfortable. So here we have a teacher who has a great personality, super friendly, but he's missing a lot of the key components. And most of you really just kind of new in this field, and you can see, hey, he's missing A, B, and C. Right away from Chapter 2, we understand that this is not a learner-centered classroom. It's teacher-centered. It's all about him. He's the one that's talking. He's the one that's doing everything. The only thing the students are doing is offering a vocabulary word here and there, and it's not even really related to the lesson. So what I want you to start doing is thinking about how we could make this lesson learner-centered. What are things that we could do to turn this around? And our Chapter 2 talks about the learner-centered classroom. Student-centered or learner-centered. It's the same idea. And for New York State, oh gosh, I had to put on my other earring. I made a phone call. I don't know where it is. And New York State wants to look at the learner-centered classroom. And Chapter 2 talks about it. And these are ideas that the students, they're not designing curriculum in learner-centered. What they're doing is they're building knowledge. They're the ones that are talking. They're the ones that are creating that knowledge, that are coming up with the ideas, that are producing language. And a couple of you said, hey, let's, and I think again it was Jennifer, you said, Move the desks around. That's a great idea. We can move the desks. We can put in pair share. We can have them write together first and then put up on the board. You can do flip chart paper. So what I would like you to do is, based on what you've read in Chapter 2 last week, on the discussion board, just put down 3 things that our friend here, our teacher, let's just call him Mr. We'll just call him Gary. Let's just call him Gary. Easy. That Gary could do to make his classroom student-centered. You don't have to read everyone else. I'd like you to read everyone else's. You don't have to respond because you all responded last week. You did such a nice job in responding. I really appreciated that. So this week, at least just put some down, read others, because in next week, we're going to write a lesson plan on this idea, but making it student-centered. So with that said, I'm going to move away from Gary, go back to here, and let's quickly just go over our Chapter 2 and the important points of learner-centered teaching. I'm just going to pause my video here for 1 minute. Oh, I'm down to 6 minutes. Hold on. So if you go back to the back of your chapter on page 68, it says in the learner-centered class, the teacher, on page 68, and it gives the bullets, uses a number of sources, activities, connects to the background, plans lessons that draw on the students' backgrounds, make connections. All of these can be done in that teacher-centered element. So I think what we really need to talk about is bullet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Learner-centered teaching is engage a student in collaborative activities, projects, and research so students can become experts in the subject being studied, and have students share their works in pairs, small groups. It's bullet 5 and 6. What we're doing is we're having students do the talking, do the writing, do the discussion, asking the questions, and really participating in the curriculum. Teachers are facilitators, and teachers decide the curriculum and decide the activity, but they really move from the idea that they're the center to the fact that the students are the center. And a student-centered classroom really has the students, the teacher's really not right in front, maybe for the first couple minutes and delivering the content. But then we're looking at smaller groups, at pairs, students getting up, going to the board, coming down. I mean, it's the antithesis of, think about the college lecture and the difference between the teacher right in front and the students looking at him. So our friend here, Gary, is completely teacher-centered here. And what could he do to really engage the students so they're not sitting there bored? We know that their comprehension is not too high on this idea of the sleepover. And really, I think it's 10 minutes we watch him just invite vocabulary words that he writes on the board. I mean, in 10 minutes, they could have learned so much more and been so much more engaged in developed language. So I want you to take the few points in this Chapter 2 and apply it to Gary's lesson and how we could make it learner-centered. Also, Chapter 2 really talks about language proficiency levels. And in ESL, in the whole field, it continues to change. It's such a new field. I think I told you that when we started, we would call students LEP, language limited English proficient. And we've gone from LEP to, let's see, we've done LCD, linguistically and culturally diverse, ESL, ELL. Now New York State, actually EdTP calls it EAL. So as our words change and vocabulary changes, so do things like proficiency level. So the book here talks about emergent bilinguals. When this book was written, that was kind of a big word, emergent bilingual. You probably won't hear that too much, especially now in New York State. We have proficiency levels, and I have them here. I'm going to go back to our course, and I just want you there, ELDP levels. You have to have these on your lesson plan. So as you begin to plan a lesson, if it is for ELL students in New York State ESL lesson for ELL learners, you must have our English language proficiency development levels. And we call them ELPD, ELD levels, ELDP levels. Any of those acronyms work, but it's our proficiency development levels. And in New York State, we have 5. They used to be called beginning, low, intermediate, intermediate, advanced, and proficient. I don't know why we changed them, but New York State changed them. So we don't want to say beginner because it might hurt feelings. So we have entering, emerging, transitioning, expanding, commanding. I just want you to get used to this idea of English language proficiency development levels, and these are the terms. So we say entering, emerging, transition, expanding, commanding, and you'll put those on your lesson plans. You might say, I have 2 emerging students and 1 transitioning and 1 commanding student. In your brain, you'll know it's beginning, low, intermediate, intermediate, advanced, proficient. In New York State, these are the required amount of contact minutes per week you need to see those students. So your commanding students who are transitioning out, you really only need to see them 90 minutes a week, which is, 3 30-minute classes. You don't need to know the minutes right now, but just be familiar with the proficiency levels and what they mean. So that's why they're there. So let's see. Oh, rats. Hold on. I'm going to pause again. Okay, so those are there just for your use. Also, the lesson plan template. Some of you have done lesson planning at Roberts. Some of you have not, and some of you have different types of lesson plans. For all our courses here at Roberts and for New York State, this is a template that's accepted universally, so we'd like you to get used to it. We're not going to fill it out this week. We're going to do it next week, but I don't want it to be a surprise. So spend 10 minutes and look through it if you've never seen it. And here it is, learning objective, prior skills. We're going to go through, and so you really understand it. We're not going to do it this week, but I want you at least to be familiar with it. So the first time I go through it, you are not just saying, holy mackerel, what is this all about? Next week, what I'll have you do is fill this out based on the sleepover lesson and really design a lesson that's more suitable than the lesson Gary did, and you'll use this particular lesson plan, and this will be your first major assignment for the course. So that's up there, so get familiar with it. And finally, here we are, back here. I think, oh my goodness, did I do the major things? You'll do your chapter responses, you'll submit them in there, you'll look at your lesson plan, you'll give us 3 suggestions on the sleepover, just 3 things. What could Gary do to make his lesson student-centered? Doesn't have to be a lot. You don't have to respond to anyone else. Just list 3 things. Paragraph is fine. Look at your ELDP or PD levels. And I think that's it. Okay. That was great. I made it under the wire. It'd be great. I'm sorry I'm posting late, but I kept this week's lesson really short and to the point. So if you could put your stuff up by Monday night, that's great. We'll be back on track on Tuesday, and that'll be terrific. All right. I miss you all. It's good to see everyone again, and take care and keep safe. It's icy out there. Talk to you soon. Bye.